Welcome to Fishing Fridays radio podcast, where we go behind the scenes and uncover the tactics and strategies top fishermen are using to catch more fish, dominate tournaments, and how you can get those same results. Here is your host, Mike Grady.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dig In Fishing Fridays. I'm your host, Mike Grady. I'm excited today. Today we have Cliff Prince here. Cliff is a Bassmaster Elite Series angler from Palatka, Florida. Cliff has fished the Bassmaster Elite Series for 8 years. Cliff has fished the Bassmaster Classic twice, and Cliff enjoys deer hunting and offshore fishing when he's not working or competing in the Bassmaster Elite Series. Welcome, Cliff.
Hey, man, glad to be here.
So tell us, Cliff, what you been up to?
Man, I just got finished with 2 tournaments. I had one here on the St. Johns River, then I also had one up on Lake Lanier up in Atlanta. And I'm fixing to go to the Bassmaster Classic. Of course, I didn't make it this past year, but I'm going to go there and help my sponsors out and do my part.
Who are your sponsors?
Well, Gravely come on board this year, Gravely Mowers, and Futch's Marine Depot. Futch's has been one of my sponsors for the last 4 years, but they've bought a marine dealership over in Gainesville, and so they've come on board. And then Mercury, Phoenix Boats, Greenfish Tackle, Bass Assassin Lures, Seagar Line, Bob Jack Plates, Power Pole. Hopefully I'm not missing anybody. But that's the main one.
Nice. So tell our listeners, how did you get started fishing?
Well, I've always loved the outdoors ever since I was a kid, and when I was growing up, I high school rodeoed and all that stuff, so I didn't really get to do a lot of competitive type fishing. And when I graduated, I started fishing with some of my buddies, fishing local tournaments and that sort of thing, and it just progressed into what it is now. I started traveling around the state, and then I started fishing the opens, traveling all over the Southeast, the Bassmaster Open, and then when I qualified for the Elites, here I am 8 years later. So it's everything's kind of fell into place.
Nice. Can you tell our listeners why you started competing professionally?
Well, one of the reasons I started competing is I've always been very competitive in anything I ever did, and that was rodeoing or any other sport that I played in. But whenever I started tournament fishing with my friends, it included the outdoors and also competitiveness. So whenever I started fishing tournaments, I'm like, well, here it is. This is what I want to do, So that's kind of what fueled the fire.
Well, I can tell you just in my own experience, I worked in the corporate world for 16 years and then started my own company. And when I was on the water and it was a Tuesday at 11 o'clock and the sun was up and a beautiful day, I'm like, this is a much better office.
Yeah, that's a lot better office. You're exactly right. I constantly have to remind myself, that, I also own that portable toilet business, and I could be back at home doing that, So, when I'm on the water, it's and it's raining and the wind's blowing 25, I still have to look back and say it could be worse. I could be punching the clock somewhere,
So you said you own a portable toilet business, huh?
Yes, I do. Yep, I've had one.
If anybody... Go ahead.
I bought that back. I was working at a plant here in Palatka and punching the clock. I'd done it for almost 12 years. And when I bought that was in progression to try to have more time where I could fish more. And that allowed me to set my own schedules where I wasn't having to punch a clock 10 hours a day. And it allowed me a little bit of leeway to set my own schedule up where I could go leave on Friday if I need to go fish a tournament on Saturday. And you know, and then it just kind of progressed into what it is now. I've got one employee, and when I'm home, I'm playing catch up.
Well, I can tell you that being a business owner is stressful, but one of the benefits is you get to control your time.
Yeah, you know, it is very stressful, you know, when the one employee I got, if he calls in sick or there's something that happens that he has no control over, and I'm in New York, you know, it does make it stressful, and there are some times that I do have to concentrate on that instead of fishing when I need to be fishing. But all in all, it pays for so much I can't afford to not do it.
So, I mean, this is aside from talking about fishing, but if somebody wanted to get a hold of you in the Central Florida area for portable toilets, where would they go?
They can look me up on any Facebook or you know, just look up a dire need portable restrooms, and I'm sure it would come up.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So back to fishing. When you're fishing the tournaments, what's the biggest challenge you've come across when you're actually in the tournaments?
Well, you know, my biggest thing is we get 2.5 days to practice, and in those 2.5 days, sometimes you might not have but a couple of bites, you know, when you're on a new body of water that you've never been to. And it's hard to have confidence and fish slow enough to really fish a place thoroughly, to really know what's there. You know, when you've got the entry fees like we have invested and the time invested, it's hard to focus on just catching a fish, you know, and not having a really good practice, if you follow what I'm talking about. And there are weeks that you only have 1 or 2 bites in practice. I mean, we go to a lot of places that are not just chock full of fish. So, it's not like I can just say, hey man, give me my money back. You know, so I gotta, you know, you gotta build on what you find, you know, and sometimes that's the best practice. That some of your worst practices have been some of my best tournaments, you know.
Let me follow up on that. Is why is it? Have you nailed that down? I mean, you've got a lot of experience doing this. Why, if you had a good practice, you have a bad tournament? If you have a bad practice, you have a good tournament?
Well, you know, not necessarily that always the case, but a lot of times when you have a really good practice, you get keyed in on one thing, and you go there saying, I'm going to catch them cranking. Well, a cold front happens to come in and they get off crankbait, and you got to start catching them on a drop shot or a shaky head. So, you know, and a lot of times when you have a bad practice, you just scrap your whole practice and you just go to the other end of the lake and do something totally different. And a lot of times that works and a lot of times it doesn't. But, you know, when you, like I say, when you have a really good practice and you get dialed in on one thing and that doesn't work, it can play on you mentally, you know, and it doesn't take long, and that 8 hours is gone in a day.
Right. Well, you kind of talked about when you go into a tournament, it sounds to me like you've got a set plan when you actually put in and you're getting ready to start.
Well, you know, if there's a body of water that I've never been to, a lot of times when I put in, I'll drop the trolling motor right there and I'll just start fishing down the bank. And, you know, looking at the water temperatures, looking at the clarity of the water, and just see what the lake offers when I get there, you know, because, you know, it may have flooded the week before, or it may be 10 foot lower than it was whenever you seen it before. So, you basically just have to make your game plan, you know, once you get there and see what the conditions are, because Mother Nature is the biggest factor in what we do. Just because you caught them on the south end of the lake does not mean you're going to be able to run down to the south end of the lake, because it might be a 25 mile an hour or 25 mile run, and it be 5 footers. So, you have to take all those circumstances into play, and hopefully you're on a pattern that'll work anywhere on the lake, but not always is the case.
How much time do you spend before a tournament planning how you're going to work that lake?
Well, the first thing I look at is the time of year, where the lake is, when the spawn is, and once you determine that, the weather always plays a factor in that also. Then you have to look at what species is there. Is it smallmouth, largemouth, spots, or whatever, and then you have to figure, are you going to be catching them deep, shallow? Is it dirty water? Is it clear water? There's all kinds of different factors that you have to determine to figure out where you're going to start and how you're going to attack that lake or river.
When you're figuring out how you can attack that lake, are you, analyzing it and writing down notes and things like that, or is it just kind of a feel kind of thing?
It's kind of a feel. I don't really necessarily write down notes. I used to whenever I was younger, when the only place I fished was the St. Johns River. I used to keep a running log of what the temperature was that day, what the water temperature was, which direction the wind was, what the tide was doing. I used to do that, but the way it is now, we fish all over the country and trying to keep notes on all that. I just try to keep a mental note of what I've done in the past if we're going back there, and that sort of stuff.
So fishing is not so much science for you, it's more of an art form, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it can be a little bit of a science to it, but anytime I've ever been back to a lake, most of the times, it doesn't matter if it's the exact same week of the year, there's always something different. The
lake has changed that much, huh?
Oh yeah, I mean, you don't change rock piles, of course, but the weather's always different. The weather's been different prior to that tournament. The grass is gone where it was, and just different things. So you can get caught up in what happened last time. So I try not to do that too much, but it doesn't always work,
Well, one of the things I know is a big factor is the weather. When you're doing your research, do you use several tools, or how do you go about, set up your plan when it comes to weather?
Well, of course, I start monitoring the weather and looking at it to see what the weather's doing the month prior to the tournament, just so I have an idea of what's been happening, because, generally if you're going to, say, South Carolina and it's been in the 80s, the water temperature is going to be warming up. But if it's been in the 40s at night, it's not going to be on a warming trend. So, you got to kind of keep that in the back of your mind of what the weather's been doing to the fish.
And just for my own knowledge, what's the difference between cold water and warm water?
Yeah. Well, I learned a big lesson when I was in Atlanta. We left here from the St. John's and the water was in the 70s. Well, we loaded up and went to Atlanta the very next week and the water was in the 40s. And the first day I zeroed and I knew I was on some fish. I didn't have a really good practice, but I knew I was in an area where some fish were. And I went back the second day and I caught 40 of them. And the only thing I did was slow down. I threw the same bait, same area. All I did was go from winding it fast to slow rolling it. And I was kicking myself by noon because I'd caught 25, but,
So with warmer water, you can go with a quicker reel, but in slow water, you find that on that particular day, it was a slow reel that was the difference.
Yeah, and that was the whole thing is what I was getting at is when the water warms up into the 50s and 60s, them fish get a lot more active and they'll chase the bait a lot further. When it's cold like that, when it's in the 40s, you just got to slow your presentation down. That goes with a jig, that goes with a shaky head, that goes with a crankbait. jerk bait, your pauses have to be longer, all the above.
Wow. Okay. So what's the hardest part about fishing in the Elite Series? That's a question that I get asked all the time. So.
Well, the hardest part about it is the financial part of it. Your sponsorships and it's not just about, when you get to this level, it's not just about fishing. You have to have sponsors that help you, support you, and that's the biggest part of it. It's being able to sell yourself and support your family and yourself financially.
Gotcha. And when once you bring a sponsor on board, what kind of commitments do you have for that sponsorship?
Well, there's all different levels. I mean, you've got product sponsors all the way up to your title sponsors, and your title sponsors may be may pay you, depending on what series you're fishing or what level you're fishing at. It could be a $5,000 deal, or it could be a $150,000 deal. So with those requirements, it just depends on what level they are. Product deals may require you a day or two at the Classic, or a day or at a grand opening of a store or something. And then, your title sponsors may require you to go, pull your rig to Oklahoma for a photo shoot and meeting and greeting, people with NASCAR. You just don't, there's all different levels of that and commitments that you have to make.
Gotcha. Hey, because you're in Palatka, did you do anything with the Daytona 500?
No, I did not. Actually we were in Atlanta when that we had back-to-back tournaments. So, I wasn't available for all that. I asked my wife, I said, when is the Daytona 500? She said, it's today. So,
okay.
It was so cram-packed that month. That month before, I didn't have a clue what was going on. I know about when it is, but with everything that was going on, shoot, I didn't have a clue.
Do you have any other crossover with any other sports other than NASCAR?
Not necessarily. You can compare us to golf players. You can compare us to football players and baseball players. We're all professional sportsmen, and all athletes, to some shape or form,
Gotcha. All right. Well, let me ask you, what is the one or two things you've learned that's made you better since you started fishing at the Elite Series?
As far as fishing goes?
Yeah, as far as fishing goes.
Well, when you fish as much as we do and as many hours as we're on the water, I would tend to say that I have more patience than a lot of fishermen. When you spend as many hours as we do, you have to prepare yourself. I'm only going to get 5 bites today, and a lot of guys, when they go out on a Saturday and they haven't had a bite by 10 o'clock, they go put it on the trailer and go to the house. Well, when we're out there and we just drove 1,000 miles to fish this tournament, you're there from daylight to dark, regardless if you get a bite or not. So you have to mentally prepare yourself to grind it out.
Gotcha. So lastly, as we come to the end of our interview, I always ask 2 questions. And Number 1 is, what's your most successful fishing secret?
My most successful fishing secret. Well, like I say, my most successful fishing secret is my electronics, my Garmin electronics. I feel like with as much time as I've spent with them, I can rely on them, and I know what I'm looking at. And I would say that would be one part that makes me more successful than an average angler.
Gotcha. And of course, the second question is, because, that talks to more about technique. Now we'll talk about your equipment. What's your most successful or your favorite lure or bait?
I love throwing top water. I mean, it doesn't always work, but, top water is a fun way to fish, and it generally produces bigger fish than average. But that's by far my favorite way to catch one.
Gotcha. Well, Cliff, you've given our listeners a lot of really great information, but I know that, this is professional fishing and we've all got to pay some bills. So do you have anything that you want to promote?
Man, Bassmaster Lures, Fitzgerald rods and reels, they're two of my local sponsors here, that are, here local and have supported me over the past 4 or 5 years. And if you guys are looking for a rod and reel, always look up Trevor at Fitzgerald Rods and Bassmaster Lures. They make some of the best plastics around. So if you guys are interested in any type of soft plastic, check those guys out.
Gotcha. Cliff, thanks for all the great information. I want to thank you for being on our show.
Yes, sir.
And good luck in the Elite Series this year.
All right, man. I appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing from you again.
All right, great.
Thanks for listening to Fishing Fridays Radio Podcast. If you'd like to be notified anytime we release a new episode, just hit subscribe and like this episode. Or you can subscribe over at fishingfridaysradio.com. In addition to that, we would love to send you a free gift. You can find that free gift at giveaway.digandanchors.com. Thanks again for listening.